Hi everyone, my name is Gregory Scott. It's really nice to be with you again today. I'm doing something different today. I was doing some research online and I was having a look at the astrology charts of some really well-known people. And the reason I do that is it's a great way of combining existing knowledge and measuring that up against the astrology charts. It allows me to look for patterns and then to really assign meanings to those patterns. So it's a really good learning tool for me. But I want to make this video in particular because I found this chart to be really interesting. This is the chart of Doreen Virtue, the angel lady. She doesn't need much introduction. She's really well known. She's so I'm not going to introduce her because she is so well known. But the thing that really struck me was that she's a triple earth sign. She's got her sun in Virgo, she's got her ascendant, so her rising sign in Capricorn, and she's got her sun in Taurus. And I'm a triple earth sign myself. I don't have the same signs of the zodiac associated with the same planets. I've got a Virgo sun, I've got a Taurus rising sign, and I've got a Capricorn moon. So the signs are different, but the fact that all three of them are in Earth is the same thing, and I'm really struck by that. So I want to have a look at this chart a little bit more in depth, and the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to spend about 20 minutes on this, I think, and I want to have a look at the natal chart for about 10-15 minutes just to see what kind of aspects I can note just from looking at the birth chart, and then I want to have a look at the solar return chart. Solar return charts are great because they look at what's coming up for that person for the next year. So, for example, the birthday in this case is the 29th of April. So if I set up a solar return chart, it looks at the trends that are coming up from the 29th of April 2014 and going through until the 29th of April 2015. And we're only in the beginning of July now, so 2 months of that year have elapsed really. So I want to have a look at what's coming up for the rest of that time for Doreen Virtue and see what the major themes are, and it's really interesting to do that. Okay, so I'm going to have a look at the natal chart first, and I just like to start with the very basics. So Doreen Virtue is she's got a sun in Taurus, and sun in Taurus is great because it's a very fitting kind of placement for her. The sun in Taurus is very much about physical comfort. It's about not liking change. It's a kind of ease and gentility. Taurus is ruled by Venus, which is the planet of love. So it's someone who's very grounded, very earthly, very much got both feet planted on the ground, and who also has a lot of practical skills and talents, and someone who's really certain of themselves, who doesn't, someone who isn't like a candle in the wind who blows this way and that way depending on whatever comes. And this is a woman who's really got strong beliefs and who's consistent about her beliefs. I was looking at her chart in the first place because her work is just incredible. 4 years ago, I was in some real need of healing, and I've spoken about this on my website and in other things. And just hearing her gentle sort of, I listen to her podcasts a lot, and just the kind of gentle nature of really being there for yourself and self-care, that's something that's really not spoken about a lot in our society, and I really gained so much from that. And that kind of message and advice can be seen as very Taurian, because Taurus, even though it is represented by the bull, it's got that loving earthly quality, that real nurturing maternal energy, and that's really makes sense here. The sun is very much about what drives that person, what gives them energy, what makes them feel enlightened and alive. And it just goes to show that the message she's putting out there is perfectly aligned with her astrology chart, because that's exactly what she does. I'm very much into the astrology because I think it is literally a blueprint or a map of what a person has chosen to come in with into this lifetime. You know, the assets, the liabilities, the challenges, the talents, all of that stuff can be seen in the astrology chart. And by working with those things, a person is able to progress in the way they want to progress and really to perfect spiritually, which is the point of this existence. You want to perfect spiritually so you can learn the lessons that you're here to learn, so that you can then return to the other side, to go home, whatever, knowing what you've learned here and really being a much more integrated and complete entity. Okay. The rising sign is in Capricorn. The rising sign is very much about how a person sees themselves. This is what's on the horizon as that person is born and just coming up over the horizon. So if you think of the horizon via what you're looking at, if you're looking east, and then you look at the sky, and that's what's just coming over that line of the horizon. And Capricorn was the constellation that was just coming up. And she sees herself as a Capricorn. Capricorns are worker bees. They're very practical, they're driven, they are also very grounded and very much ambitious and willing to succeed. Not wanting to succeed from having things handed to them on a silver platter, but really looking at success via what can I do? What action can I take to progress, to advance myself, and to really get something meaningful done? Moving on to the moon, that's on the northeast side of that chart if you have a look, and that moon is in Virgo. And I always find that Virgo and Pisces are really the most spiritual signs of the zodiac. Virgo on the kind of grounded level, you know, the Virgo is very much the intuitive that is part of a community and that gives practical grounded advice, and Pisces is more the mystic that has all this information but then lives in that space much more, whereas Virgo, I feel, takes it to the next level in terms of making it useful by bringing it to people. The moon in itself is a very intuitive psychic planet. In astrology, it represents the intuition, it represents mother, and it also represents what makes you feel comfortable and what makes you feel nurtured. So the fact that her moon is in Virgo is very much an indicator that she has this intuitive ability. And the fact that it's in the 8th house, the chart is split up into these 12 grids or slots. If you play Trivial Pursuit, it's those kind of things you put the triangles in, and it's the same thing with astrology. The wheel is split up into these 12 areas, and her moon is in that 8th area, so the 8th house. And the 8th house has to do with the subconscious and the unmanifest. So the fact that Doreen Virtue's intuitive abilities are in that psychic star sign Virgo, in the area of the unconscious, the kind of collective unconscious part of her chart, means there's a great potential to be intuitive. And it's wonderful to see when a person is really matching their life to the astrology chart, because the astrology chart I see as the reality. That's what you've come in here with. That's what the soul wants to do. And when that's actually reflected in someone's life, that's great, because it means that person's on track. So let's move on to a few of the other things here. If you look at the rising sign, what's opposite the rising sign on the other side of the chart is called the descendant, and that's in Cancer, and that's very much indicative of what this person is looking for in a romantic partner. And Cancer is a water sign. It's very much focused on the emotions, it's very much focused on feelings, and it's loyal. It makes sense, because if someone is very much a worker and very much driven to succeed, the partner can complement that side of that personality by providing more in the aspect of home, in the kind of family area. You know, if someone's working 16 hours a day, they're not going to be able to cook the meals. So it's a nice combination of the worker with the person who's more the homebody. So that's really what she needs in terms of a partner. And the next thing I look at is combinations of planets in certain areas, because combinations means there's an area of focus and there's something really going on. And if you look at the top of the chart into that 9th house, she's got Neptune, the North Node, and Jupiter all in the 9th house. First of all, the ninth house is the area of learning and higher learning and expansion. And if you look at her career, she's made a career of really understanding the higher realms and then putting that into, book form so that people can read it and learn from it and experience it with her. So that's an important thing, but also the planets themselves that are in that area are really significant. Neptune is the dream planet, it's the fantasy, and that's in her area of learning and information. So if you think of the work that she does with angels, that's not something that's very concrete. You have to kind of tap in to the higher realms to really become aware of that information anyway. And her Neptune allows her to do that. Jupiter is the expansive planet. It's the planet of good luck, of fortune and expansion. That really makes sense. It's also in Libra, which is the sign of the zodiac, which is all about creating harmony and beauty. So if you look at that Jupiter, which is expansive, her productivity and her I can't remember the word now, but when someone's really productive, that really matches Jupiter because it always expands, it grows and grows and grows. And Doreen Virtue's published loads of books and is always very busy, so that makes sense. The other thing is that there's always new information coming out, so the information doesn't stop. It expands and expands. And the Libra beautifying things, the topic is angel. That's something very sensitive and something very, on a practical level, very pretty and very feminine. And that creates real beauty and harmony in people's lives. When they pick up one of these books, I sound like I'm marketing for her now, but really I'm just looking at this via the chart. But if you look up a book, anything that has to do with angels, it's something wonderful. They're pleasant kind of entities, and it's nice to look at that. So that's in there. Let's look at some of the other things here. You've got Uranus and Pluto on the kind of northeastern side of this chart in the 7th house, and I'm using the northeastern and things like that just to direct you. In astrology they're called, the directions are different, but I'm just doing that to direct your eyes here. It's Pluto and Uranus in the area of relationships, so something will be done differently there. There'll be a kind of ending and rebirth, a cycle of ending and rebirth, and that makes sense in terms of the past relationships that she's had, and also doing things differently. If you're going to be really conservative and conformist, then you get married once and that's it. That's really what a lot of people are expected to do, and she's broken out of that expectation by doing things her own way, and that's reflected by those two planets in that area. And it's wonderful when you look at a chart like that and things really click together and make sense, because it gives you so much information about a person. Now if you cast your eyes completely across from those two planets, you end up in the 1st house, and you've got two other heavenly bodies there. You've got Chiron, which is the one in green, and you've got Mars, which is the red planet. Chiron is the part of the astrology chart that often represents a certain amount of pain, and it's in her area of her 1st house, which has to do with identity and self. So there's been something about herself that she's found very difficult to come to terms with, and it could be on a physical level or it could be on a personality level. So there's something about her that's either suffering from low self-esteem or a kind of lack of self-love about a certain part of her own personality. And that's interesting, because if that's the case, then she's turned that around and has helped other people deal with the same issue in themselves. So that's really a wonderful gift that Chiron has given her, and she's turned it into something really wonderful and practical. The next thing is Mars in Pisces, and Mars is the red planet. It really has to do with fire, and it's really not happy in that Pisces. I mean, it's the least happy in Cancer. Pisces isn't as bad, but it's not thrilled to be in a water sign. So it means that there's some sort of frustration about the self and some lack of expression in terms of anger, an inability or a frustrated sense of anger that isn't allowed to come out, and that's never really expressed properly, which then can cause internal issues and frustrations and problems. Okay, so those are really the main key things here in terms of the birth chart. I could go on in terms of the Venus and Mercury and Saturn there. I haven't even looked at that. And then also the things in the center of the screen, the aspects. You see those lines, the blue lines and the red lines. Those are all called aspects, and they determine the interaction of the planets that they have with each other, and those are important. So maybe if I do another chart, I'll look at that in more depth. But now I want to move on to the solar return chart, which is that birthday chart which I mentioned. And the main themes here that Doreen Virtue is going to have this year, the main area of luck that she's going to have is in terms of spirituality. So she's got her Jupiter in her 12th house this year in Cancer. So the 12th house has to do with spirituality and giving to others. So it means that she's going to have really expansive, wonderful spiritual insights this year, and which is great for people who read her books and who enjoy her work, because there'll be more information coming through. So that's something that's wonderful and great to look forward to. Then I want to just cast my eyes to the top side of this chart as well, which in astrology is seen as a southern hemisphere, and there's a lot of activity going on there. And what that tells me straight away is that there's a lot of things in the public. So there's more to do with the outer life rather than the inner life. The bottom half of the chart has to do with the inner, and the top has to do with the outer. And it's in the area of career, learning and travel and expansion, and then also that subconscious area. So the first thing that I see is there will be some work that comes through that's a bit more that delves quite deeply into helping people overcome emotional pain. So a lot of the angel stuff that I've read is quite nice, and it makes you feel good, and it's quite it's pleasant. But I really think she's going to go down the road in her work in terms of looking at things from a much more in-depth perspective, so not being afraid to look at some of those deeper, darker things. The next thing is Uranus and Venus in the 9th house, and it means that there's going to be some changes or something unexpected happening with her travel life. I also think that she's going to really enjoy doing more research and being more of a homebody. So I think the travel side of things, something's going to change in that area this year. So either her schedule could be more busy or less busy, but I really feel it's going to be less busy this year, and there's going to be less travel going on. And then finally, we've got a lot of activity in that 10th house of career. You've got the sun and the moon. So when the sun and the moon are that close together, if you think of it in practical terms, that's a new moon, because there's no light being shed onto the moon. So it's a period of growth, and she's really reevaluating her career, where it's going, and she's planting new seeds and determining a new direction for her career and where it's going to go. So if you think about the new moon, it's a period of planting the seeds and then setting the intention and watching those seeds grow. So if you apply that to a person would sit down and reflect on where they want their career to go, if that's what they're doing, if they're planting those seeds and then waiting to see what comes up. It's also, Mercury is also on top of there, and it's all in Taurus. So there's going to be a lot of communication around this. She's going to be in discussion and talks with people around planning her career and getting that out there. And maybe even shifting things. If you look at that arrow going up in the middle top part of the chart, that's in Aries, that's the midheaven, and that has to do with, that's the boss of the chart, that's really the career path, and that's in Aries, which means there's pioneering going on. Fire, pioneering, and the drive and energy to get something done. So she's really going to want to go down a different path, change things up a little bit, and do something that she's not done before. So there's really good things to look out for in terms of Doreen Virtue's career this year. Something is going to definitely change, and something's going to be different. That's great. Okay, and then finally, just to finish the chart, Pluto again is in the 6th house, and that's the house of the daily routine, and that's the everyday life. And Pluto is death and rebirth. So her daily routine is going to be changing a lot and is going to be altering. So that really corresponds with the information I got around the career and job situation. So watch this space. I really expect some changes for her to come up this year. And by this year, I mean until April 29th, 2015. Okay, so I hope that's given you a flavor. This is a really whistle-stop tour of a chart, and let alone one chart, two charts. But it just gives you an idea of really what I look for and what I can see in these charts. So I hope you found this interesting. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can visit my website. It's gregoryscott.com. You can have a look at my bio on there. You can also look at the readings that I do and see what's involved there. And you can also send me an email. The address is readings@gregoryscott.co.uk. And you can also find me on Facebook. It's facebook.com/GregoryScott444. Have a great day, and I'll speak to you soon.